What you are about to hear is not just a story about a forest in Japan. It is a story about silence, about nature growing on ancient volcanic ground, about perception, culture, and how a place can become something far larger than itself. At the foot of Japan's most iconic mountain lies a dense forest, dark, still, and deeply quiet. This place is known as Aokigahara Forest. But long before the world attached meaning, labels, and stories to it, this forest was simply the result of powerful geological forces shaping the land over thousands of years. A long time ago, Mount Fuji erupted violently. Lava flowed across the region, burning everything in its path. And then it cooled, forming a vast field of hardened volcanic rock. From this foundation, life slowly returned. Pioneer trees began to grow, their roots stretching into cracks of black lava stone. Over centuries, layer upon layer of vegetation formed what is now a dense, interwoven forest ecosystem. But this is not an ordinary forest. The soil beneath it is volcanic and porous. The terrain is uneven, shaped by hardened lava flows. And the vegetation is so dense in certain areas that sunlight struggles to penetrate the canopy. As a result, parts of the forest feel unusually still, unusually quiet, almost as if sound itself is absorbed into the environment. And here stands Aokigahara Forest, growing slowly, steadily, and silently beneath the shadow of Mount Fuji. But the story of this forest is not only geological, it is also cultural. In Japanese tradition, forests often carry spiritual significance. They are seen as places of reflection, places of transition, places where the boundary between the human world and the natural world feels thinner. But interpretations are never simple, because culture shapes meaning just as much as nature shapes landscape. Over time, Aokigahara Forest became widely known outside Japan, not because of its natural beauty alone, but because of the narratives that began to form around it. Stories that spread through media, stories shaped by human curiosity, and stories amplified by misunderstanding. Yet beneath all of that, the forest remains what it has always been: a living ecosystem, home to birds, insects, mammals, and countless unseen interactions of life. These organisms do not recognize human narratives. They do not understand reputation. They simply exist, move, and adapt within the environment. And this creates a powerful contrast between nature as it is and nature as it is perceived. When entering the forest, the first thing many people notice is not fear, but silence. A deep, layered silence that feels different from typical woodland environments. Light filters weakly through dense foliage. Shadows stretch longer than expected, and pathways become increasingly difficult to distinguish. The volcanic soil, mixed with moss and uneven rock, affects footing and orientation. Sound behaves differently here. It does not travel as far. It feels softened, absorbed. And in this way, the forest reshapes perception itself. From a scientific standpoint, many of these effects can be explained. Dense vegetation reduces sound propagation. Volcanic terrain influences electromagnetic and geological conditions. And limited visibility alters spatial awareness. But even with scientific explanations, the emotional experience of the forest remains difficult to quantify. Because human perception is not only physical, it is psychological and deeply contextual. Over time, Aokigahara Forest has been studied by researchers from multiple fields. Geologists study its volcanic foundation. Ecologists study its biodiversity. Psychologists examine human perception and emotional response. Anthropologists study cultural meaning. And sociologists explore how narratives form around specific locations. Yet, despite all of this research, no single explanation fully defines the forest's reputation or its perceived atmosphere. Because what is being studied is not just land, it is interpretation. How humans assign meaning to silence, how culture transforms geography into symbolism, and how stories shape collective understanding. In many academic perspectives, Aokigahara is not simply a forest. It is a mirror that reflects the emotional state of the observer. To some, it is peaceful. To others, it feels unsettling. To others still, it is simply a natural environment. The forest itself does not change, but human perception does. And this distinction is crucial, because it reveals that much of what is associated with the forest exists not in the environment itself, but in interpretation layered upon it. In modern times, Japan has placed increasing attention on mental health awareness and social well-being, including broader efforts across regions near Mount Fuji. Education programs, public awareness initiatives, support systems, and attempts to reduce stigma surrounding emotional struggles. These efforts exist independently of the forest itself, but they reflect a larger societal context in which narratives about places can sometimes overshadow deeper human realities. Meanwhile, Aokigahara Forest continues to exist as it always has: quiet, dense, and deeply rooted in natural cycles. Fog often moves through its trees in the early morning. Sunlight filters through branches in thin, scattered beams. And wind passes softly through the canopy, barely disturbing the leaves. Visually, it is one of the most striking forest environments in Japan. But its meaning is layered and complex, because Aokigahara is not defined by a single perspective. From a geological standpoint, it is the result of volcanic activity. From an ecological standpoint, it is a stable and evolving ecosystem. From a cultural standpoint, it carries symbolic interpretations. From a psychological standpoint, it reflects human emotion projected onto nature. All of these perspectives coexist, and none alone defines the whole. At its core, Aokigahara Forest represents something fundamental about human understanding: that places are never just physical locations. They are intersections of nature, memory, culture, and narrative. And as long as humans seek meaning in silence, landscapes like this will continue to be reinterpreted. Not because the forest changes, but because we do. In the end, Aokigahara is not only about trees or terrain. It is about perception, about how silence can be interpreted in countless ways, and how stories can grow over time until they become inseparable from the places they describe. And so, the forest remains, standing at the base of Mount Fuji, quiet, enduring, and always open to interpretation. A place where nature and narrative coexist, and where the line between reality and meaning continues to blur.